Welcome to the Internet of Things Weather Station Power and Internet Assembly Guide. In this video, we'll walk you through all the steps you need to add a solar panel and battery pack to your weather station so it can fully operate in the field. Every weather station is going to need a source of power, and I'm going to show you how you can set up a solar panel as a power source for your weather station. Now, in order to start, we're going to need a battery. We're going to need some PVC pipe that's 1 inch thick. We are going to need pieces that look like this, which allow us to mount flat objects onto a PVC pipe. These are 3D printed parts. We'll need a small solar panel that has a wire. And you'll notice on the battery that there's no terminal that has this ending, so we're going to need an adapter to make it fit into the type of port that we're going to use to power our weather station, which could be different for you, but that's what this piece here is. So to get started, I recommend we take our 3D printed mounts and slide them onto our pipe. Sometimes this can be a little bit tight, so just be prepared to push a little. If your pieces don't fit well, then you can file them down. So once these are on, you'll notice I've already drilled some pilot holes here for my screws. I highly recommend you do this. It makes it a lot easier. And then I'm just going to put this battery here to brace it so it doesn't roll too much. And then on top of that, I'm going to line up my solar panel with one of the pilot holes, stick in the screw, and screw that down. Right now it's not sliding because I screwed these in tight. If I loosen them a little bit, you'll see I can slide this on and off, which is good as you set up your weather station. You might be deciding where you want to put this and you might change your mind a couple of times. Once it can go on PVC pipe, you can move it around as much as you need. And now I'm just going to go ahead and add my adapter to the end of the solar panel cord. This is actually going to be a waterproof connection, which means it's very difficult to get on. You have to push really hard. All right, just heard that snap. That means it's in. And I can go ahead and plug it in to my battery pack. And now when exposed to the sun, this solar panel is going to charge this battery. Because there are many electronic parts in your weather station, and your weather station is going to be exposed to all kinds of elements, it's important to protect them properly. This means that most of our electronic parts that aren't housed in our weather station are going to live inside of this junction box. So I'm going to show you how to set up your junction box now. In order to do that, first you're going to need a junction box, a 1 inch PVC pipe, 2 of those PVC mounts with screws. These are the screws for the lid of my junction box. Yours should come with that, hopefully. I'm using a Wi-Fi hotspot in order to run my weather station, so I'm going to need my Wi-Fi stick. And I'm using a little USB to USB adapter, which is an extender, so that I can bend my Wi-Fi stick, because otherwise it's going to come straight out of the top of this, which is really big and hard to fit in a junction box, but this will allow me to have a little bit more flexibility. You're also going to need your USB-C to USB power cable for your core unit. You might have to unplug the cable from the core unit in order to work on this. And then you're going to need your solar panel, which I've already set up for mounting. To begin, I'm going to go ahead and just take my Wi-Fi stick and put it inside of this, and then I'm just going to go ahead and put that off to the side just so that that's done. Next, let's go ahead and open up our junction box, and you'll notice that there's a hole drilled into this junction box and there's a plug placed on it. I'm going to go ahead and unscrew the outside of the plug just for the moment. You'll see that it's pretty small. So if I were to try to fit this USB end of this cord in, I wouldn't be able to get it through. And so instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the USB-C side that goes into my main weather station unit, and I'm going to wire it from the inside. And I'm also going to pull it through this end cap. Next, we have the solar panel. So because the solar panel feeds into the battery, even though this is a waterproof connection, the battery can't be exposed to the elements. So we're going to have to connect this inside of the box. Now with this waterproof end on it, it's too big to fit through my hole. It might not be the same for you, but I'm going to have to unplug that adapter, feed it through, and then re-plug it. Okay, now I have both my USB end and the end of my solar panel cord coming into this junction box. So I'm going to recap the end of the solar panel cord. Okay, now we have all of the cords we need to go in to feed into this box in this box. So we can go ahead and retighten this screw here, which I took off just so that we only have to get through one thing at a time. So it can be a bit of a tight squeeze. So now that we have our solar cable and our USB cable, and we have our Wi-Fi stick already plugged into USB extender, I'm gonna go ahead and just start plugging things in. So now we have the Wi-Fi getting powered, we have the station getting powered, and we have the battery getting charged from the solar panel. I recommend putting all of this as close to the exit port for the wires as possible, because my wires are a little bit on the shorter side. If you have pretty long wires, you can actually tuck the extra wires into here, and that will protect them from the elements. So do your best to get it all in there as flat as you can so that you can get the lid onto the box, which is our next step. All right, so much like the solar panel, which is mounted on these, we're going to do the same thing with the junction box. The junction box is quite a bit heavier, so make sure that these fit pretty tight so it's not swinging around like crazy. Line up these holes on the junction box with the pilot holes you made and go ahead and screw it on. Again, if you screw it very tight down, you probably won't be able to move it much because it will probably end up with the tip of the screw going into the PVC pipe. So while you're still maneuvering it, it can be a looser connection. Okay, now I've screwed my PVC mounts into my junction box. So I'm going to go ahead and just remove this PVC pipe. I put it on there to brace it, and now I'm just going to take it out so I can adjust things better. All right, now you can see my screws are pretty long, so this is still a pretty loose connection. Once it's on the PVC the way that I want it to be in the final assembly, I'm going to tighten this down so it'll be really secure. Now we have our solar panel and our junction box ready to mount onto our final weather station setup. This is a good time to remind you that the IoT-WX is very modular, so every weather station might look different. Every weather station can have different capabilities if you want to modify it. So I'm going to show you how I set up my final weather station. That might not be the same way you want to set up yours, but it's a good gauge and a good reference for how the final assembly might look. In my final setup of my IoT weather station, I've decided that I don't want to leave my UV sensor coming out of the core unit like this, like in the original assembly video. I actually wanted to sit a little bit lower so that my solar panel and junction box can sit straight across from here. This is a personal preference. This is just how I'm setting it up. So I've gone ahead and unplugged my UV setup, and I'm going to go ahead and feed it through here. Now I can go ahead and plug this back into my weather station now that this is set up. Okay, now since this with the UV is the pole that's going to be going into the ground, this is the PVC pipe that's going to be holding my solar panel and my junction box. So I'm just going to go ahead and move this to the side for now. And I'm just going to work on setting up my solar panel and junction box. Now I have a pretty short power cord coming out of my junction box, and I'm going to feed it through this PVC pipe all the way back into the weather station. So I want the end of this to be as close as possible to the opening of this pipe, just to save some space. So I'm going to want my junction box to sit like this, which means I'm going to want my solar panel to be a little bit further in. I'm going to go ahead and slide on one end of my solar panel, and then I'm going to go ahead and slide on the end of my junction box that does not have the cable coming out of it. And once that's on, I can add the second mount of my solar panel. My solar panel is fully mounted, and I can go ahead and push the junction box in further until I can add the second mount of the junction box to this pipe. Okay, now you can see I have both mounts for my junction box and both mounts for my solar panel attached. My next step is going to be to feed this USB-C power cord back through this pipe so that eventually it can reach the microcontroller inside of the weather station to provide power. Now that I have all of my pieces where I want them on this, as far as the junction box and the solar panel go, I'm going to go ahead and tighten up my screws on my PVC mounts. Junction box is tightened, so now let's go ahead and tighten our PVC. Now it's important to note that things aren't really going to rotate around once it's tight. So once you have your weather station in its final position, you might want to loosen these screws again and get it at the right angle to get the most sunlight. But for now, let's just go ahead and say there's good. All right, now we have our junction box and solar panel set up on our PVC pipe. We just need to go ahead and do some last wiring and we'll be all set. Now that everything is completely set up, it's time for our final assembly. First, we're going to need to attach our USB-C and our UV sensor wires back into the center of our microcontroller. So to do this, I'm going to go ahead and pull the quick connector and the microcontroller towards the edge of this and plug them in through all of the piping that's going to be needed. So you need to plan ahead a little bit of what your layout's going to be when you do this step. It's a bit messy, but now I have the quick connector and the microcontroller facing out, which means it's time to put our pipes into their proper place. This wire is going to go through my top pipe to go straight into the weather station. Meanwhile, the cord for my UV is going to go up here and then turn, because my UV is going to sit a little bit lower. Again, it depends on where each of your sensors is, what the proper setup is, because it might not be the same for you as it is for me. Now my final pipe that I need to thread through is my PVC to threading attachment. So I'm going to go ahead and put it through there. And now finally I can plug in my UV sensor and my power, and that will mean every wire is connected to run this entire station off of a Wi-Fi hotspot, a solar panel, and a battery. Okay, everything's plugged in and I'm seeing some lights light up, which means that I'm just going to push all of these wires back in, twist it into the threading, and admire my work. Here we have our fully assembled Internet of Things weather station with a UV sensor, a rain gauge, air quality sensor, temperature, pressure, humidity, powered by a solar panel, a battery, and a Wi-Fi stick. I can go ahead and plant this in the field using this as the base. Ideally, it's going to be about 2 feet from the ground so that it avoids picking up any extra heat that's radiating off the ground or any other confusing factors for the sensors, so that it truly represents my microclimate. But here we go. This is our Internet of Things weather station ready for deployment.